Hello and welcome back to Good Game Nation, where we bring you all things TCG. My name is Preston, and I'm here with Sam. Hello.
It's a slight fumble. We're good. It is a
We're good.
nice day in Googie Nation. We're excited to bring you something a little spicy.
Yeah, we are back on our tier list, and we have to talk about set two over here in the West. We've done these for the East and followed up with set three and stuff like that. We wanted to tell you what we thought and where we think things are going for us in North America and the rest of the world that gets all of the cards later. Um, where would you like to start? Do you just want to drop a bunch of stuff in a void right away,
You
or?
know, there's some things that we probably don't even need to discuss. There's a reason you haven't seen them. But I think there also was a really clear divide in what was good and what was bad in the East. I think it was very clear, especially if you just look at tournament results off that alone. So I think there's a lot of things that are easily you could just avoid. There's a reason you didn't see him in set one. There's a reason you're not gonna see them in set two.
Yeah, and the hard part is Uta seems like a dope leader, and any vanilla leader seems like it's a dope leader.
Yeah,
Uh, I want King to be good because he's the opposite of Zoro's effect, so he potentially has good, but it just isn't playable.
yeah. It's there's things like I think Shanks is a card we have to keep revisiting if more film stuff gets added, of course.
Hmm.
But there's like I said, a clear divide in what's good and what was bad.
Hmm.
I think there was a lot more leeway in set one. Like I think you could probably still get away with playing some of set one. Like I think um, Kaido always will have that
Hmm.
wow factor. You played it in set one. It's not too much different. You're probably gonna add Hell's Judgment and maybe a couple Magellans if you like him or not.
Hmm.
But you stick to the film. You stick to set one. It's the core of the deck. It's gonna stick around. It'll probably always be around, to be honest.
Yeah, out of all of the championship series in Japan, it always top 32.
Mm-hmm.
I never really saw those lists, so I don't know how they were playing it. But top 32 consistent over like the five or six tournaments they had. It had at least one top eight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so still a consistently good deck. It's doing what it wants to.
Yeah,
It just can't beat the decks you're going to see that end up in good and best.
yeah.
Uh, it just doesn't stack up, unfortunately. Um, and I don't think that's going to change for us either. I
Mm,
don't think it has the support to move on.
No, and I think we catered to it. I think we like it here in the West. I don't think it's a deck we really avoided. We are in a best of one format in most of our tournaments. Kaido is a little unfortunate for that format since you can brick in that deck. That's why it lands a potential. It definitely can't be lower. It definitely can't be higher. So it lands a potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think we can put the next crocodile on the list and avoid.
Absolutely.
It doesn't get a lot of love here. The other blue purple Kaido is very similar.
Uh,
I think people will play them.
yeah.
I saw some around, but we're talking about a competitive tier list, and
Yeah.
these decks don't feel competitive to me. Um, Decks that have fallen from grace that I would say is probably still fun to play, but isn't going to rank up against anything else is Kid.
Oh, I
Uh,
knew you wanted that one. Oh, I knew
I
you were.
did. I did. This deck is so good in set one, and it just gets outclassed.
Yeah.
I think people will still play it because they're comfortable on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think after they lose to Whitebeard and Kinemon and any of the other ones that we see higher, they'll
Ooh.
switch over to Kinemon because they already have the green cards. When we were doing, yeah, you can just drop that up there. When we were doing our analysis through set two, the Kinemon deck and the Kid deck are so similar.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is Kinemon is better. Kinemon does it faster, he can do it more consistently, and he has more support with the Wano characters. So he just ends up immediately going to the top. and it's hard to argue that.
It's very, yeah. There's you hit everything on the head. You do get a great card. That 4-drop Yamato is absolutely fantastic. It does make that kid deck even better.
Hmm.
But you play all the same cards in Kinemon, and it runs more efficiently. It's just how it is. There's nothing really you can argue about it. Kinemon, I unfortunately never won one of those large tournaments, but I'm willing to bet that it was the most appearing. It was in the tournaments, and it was always in the high 15s, 16s. It was a very well built deck.
To quote a movie, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. He never won, but he was always in second,
Yep,
like
yep,
almost consistently in second.
yep,
Top fours, tons of them. So
yep,
it's going to be a force to reckon with,
yep.
and we'll see how we just destroy with it. I think it's scary.
You mentioned earlier that you play decks that are similar and you build them similarly, and decks that are going to fall from grace. I think Luffy's another one. I'm actually shocked that we had more success with him in the West. We really catered to Zoro very heavily, very early on. And I thought we should have catered to Luffy. Luffy did much better in the East.
Hmm.
But you're gonna play a very similar deck. If you did play Luffy different, it would be slower. Then you would have a worse matchup with Whitebeard. But so you play it similarly, but you play the dot on combo. You play the dot on with the other searchers, and the deck just flies. These games were lasting 5, 6 turns. They weren't lasting very long. A lot of speed coming out of this red early combo.
Hmm. Absolutely. And the Whitebeard deck evolves closer to Whitebeard Pirates the longer the meta goes on,
Yep.
because you're going to play it very similar to the Zoro deck. We saw Zoro just flying with tons of tops at the beginning, and then Whitebeard ends up taking over. Um, the interesting thing is when Zoro was doing well in the East for set two, set one was just like breaking off in the West. So everyone saw Zoro doing well, so they played that list minus the set two stuff
Mm-hmm.
in set one.
Right.
Everyone's used to that now,
Yep.
and they're playing around it. I think they are at least.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't see Zoro do well in set one, like Treasure Cup stuff. So I don't think it's going to have as much success because we kind of already pushed that narrative.
Yeah.
Um, it's obviously an incredible deck. Weenies and that constant 1000 boost on everything
Mm-hmm.
is obnoxious. So it's still going to be present, but I think everyone's going to go, I know how to work around this.
Yeah.
Let me quickly clear their board and just run over them. I have card destruction, I have field destruction. Let me just deal with it, attack over, and play the game I'm good at. So I don't think it's going to do as well here.
No, I would agree with that too. You could argue it'd probably be around in this area, but it won so many tournaments early on, and it's that combo has so much potential to always do that. So it always needs to be on your radar, and there is a clear divide between these decks and the rest. So I think it needs to be on your radar, of course, and then the Whitebeard Zoro eventually evolve into playing the Whitebeard 9-drop, and almost eliminate Shanks. I don't think I've seen a single Shanks since Whitebeard got released. And that end game becomes just absolutely brutal for Zoro and Whitebeard towards the end of season 2. And
Hmm.
it could be the reason that Kinemon's evolutions never ended up in a tournament win.
Yeah.
Because Kinemon had less room to evolve because it's pretty constrained, I think, in what it has to play. But with those being at the top, you it kind of fills out the middle and the bottom more. You don't play Magellan. Please don't play Sakazuki. Smoker is a much better black leader if you're looking for a 5 life black leader. Again, we gush about the black cards on this channel often. Set 2, I think set 2 black cards are probably better than set 3 black cards.
Oh, absolutely.
They're both sets for black were absolutely wonderful. The problem is they don't have the tools yet to deal with the speed coming out of Kinemon, Zoro, and Whitebeard. They just don't. They play cards and they have to trade, and by the time they have to trade, Kinemon has double the troops on the board, and it takes too long to get to Kuzan. So it's not doesn't have the speed yet.
As a testament of not having the speed, the black purple Zed that did well was running so many 2K counters that it was doing well just based off of defense. And
Yep.
then it would hit its admirals at the end of the game and be able to defend itself with more 2Ks.
Yep.
So the best black leader we have currently is Zed. I don't know if it's as yeah, I think potential's the best spot for it. And I think that we can take that form and probably push it further. Um, we have an opportunity to already know what did well.
Yep.
So, in a very counter meta version of Black Purple, uh, you can probably get this into good if enough players see that potential and play it. Um, the four lives is hurtful, but with all the counters and the destruction from purple, you should be fine.
Yep.
Um,
I think you still have a little, it's still a tough matchup. You're running a 4 life leader into a very very aggressive meta, but I do think the West caters to this style as well. I think we like the challenge. I don't know. So I think this deck will do better than it did in the East, and we do have lists that we can start with, and just build off it. But again, we do struggle with that because Black only has one set, and to be honest, Purple didn't get a second set either. So it's very hard to build a deck with just two sets of colors. So
yeah,
this deck gets incredible on set 3. This deck is going to be,
it
I
has
I.
to be. Yeah.
I really believe in it. I think that's the time.
Hmm.
But I think we put it higher. Last time, potential's where it belongs, just because those matchups are so brutal. But I do can see it. I can see it winning
Yeah,
a tournament, a
absolutely.
couple big tournaments.
Um, Towards the end of the set, we started to see people play Odin again. I think
Yes.
that is a deck that, because Kinemon just does it better, Odin doesn't get played. But it is going to be a fun deck. You might be able to push it more competitively. I was so excited for this leader when set one dropped, and it just couldn't keep up. And I think that's where it still is. It just doesn't keep up, and is a shame because I think it is a masterful leader. You still need to play it perfectly. The problem is when you talk about perfect leaders or like perfect play with leaders, I think of Law also. And we're always gushing about Law. It has the best two colors in the game, and it is also a very pilot dependent deck. You really need to know when to hit your cards so that you optimize that play perfectly. And with only four life on one of the best four life leaders, it's super important to hit that. It was the first dual color leader to win a, a championship series, so it's probably the best dual color leader and probably the mid range of best. It just depends. It's such a hard leader. So I don't know. Yeah, it's somewhere in there. Um,
It's tough to tell.
yeah.
You hit on the head. You have to, in the West as well, you get the added cost that unfortunately these are the most expensive cards as well. You're gonna have to run, I think 90% of the most expensive cards. You're gonna be down a life in a very weenie meta. Kinemon's gonna swarm the board. So is most iterations of Whitebird and Zoro. Um, and you have to navigate to a point where you get 5 on the board to do your tricks and your sweet stuff. You do get a lot of pros. You get a ton of great cards in the red set. That red set is amazing.
Hmm.
You do get Yamato in green as well, and there's so many good cards. It won the last 2 large tournaments, but always in low turnouts.
Hmm.
That always means the best pilots have to play this. You have to put all your time into it. I recommend it if you were playing Law in set 1. I would stick with it because it's just going to be good, just as good, if not better, in this set, and probably stay prevalent in the next set as well. So
Yeah.
if you're on it, stay on it. It's going to be one of the best, if not the best.
Hmm.
Um,
Um,
that kind of fills out the top, honestly, and the rest of the middle is depressing. Garp is a really cool leader when we not in this set. If maybe for future ones, I think red and black, and when the meta slows down eventually, there's something here for him, but not in this one. I would say the same for this Luffy. It's pretty depressing. This Sanji is another one that I think has it should belong in potential. To be honest, it should belong in potential, just because of what it can do and the potential of its speed and power. It's just a matchup nightmare for against the top. You don't want to play against a Whitebeard. That's like the one deck you want to avoid it the most. But I'd imagine, considering how we followed us playing Zoro, since we were playing Zoro in the East at the time, Whitebeard just won the last large tournament in the East, and first and second were both Whitebeard. I'm expecting to see Whitebeard a lot, and that's not a good time for Sanji. But the deck is good. I think Sanji probably beats 90% of the stuff down here. It's just not fun up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no contest there. And we're left with two blue leaders, and one of them actually won a tournament in set two. So Ivank is definitely either in potential or good. We don't have anything in good, so it probably lands there. This is a good deck that on a expert pilot is going to win, but we only saw one of those. And even the rest of the format, I can't remember them even topping. So it's a very difficult deck and it's going to be very meta specific. And locals you're probably going to kill with the Vonk. It's such a fun deck. It has explosive power. It has that ridiculous Luffy that does double attack. And I think it also bounces something on play or something like that. It's ridiculous. So it has great plays. It just loses to most of those four decks. You just have to outplay or hope that your opponent misplays when you're playing against those top four.
Sure.
Um, and you'll most likely just outplay if you're a good pilot. Um, but it's definitely not in the S tier. It's not anywhere near a 2-0. It's just a really good deck. Um, and then there's the last blue leader, which had such a different turnout in
Uh huh. The West.
our tournaments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That, yeah, to the point where it was topping and was undefeated on a lot of people's like YouTube videos. Like I went 21-0 and like that's incredible because no one played it. No one consistently played it in the East. So just because people played it so heavily in the West and it showed up in treasure cups all of the time, I think it's going to stay in potential and
Mm-hmm.
possibly be good because it gains the impel down stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It could play Ivank into Luffy
Yep.
because you also have the crocodile that came out of this that you could pull with Ivank.
Yep.
And is it Gecko? It also got a good Gecko Moria.
4 drop 6K.
Yeah, so the deck didn't gain a lot of support, but everything else will still work in it. So we could definitely see it potentially jump to good, um, or jump to fun, and that's a great spot for this in our tier list because we don't know where it's gonna go, but it should be middle tier and up or middle tier and down.
Yeah, I think the Delphi is the one that's the hardest to predict because it had such a large turnout here. And going into set one of the East, Delphi was my favorite leader, because of a lot of the plays and options that you had. And I think as a Western player, if that's what I catered for and liked, and I think my the companion, everyone else agreed with that. You get probably the most explosive play in the game, even to the date, with Ivank and Luffy. And having that crocodile as a backup is wonderful. I think of Ivank and Kaido the same, where they have very same explosion. The difference was Ivank was just much more consistent. Your combos revolved around you drawing a lot of cards, and Kaido's doesn't. You have to top deck the right stuff usually.
Mhm.
Um, so Avant got to see a lot more cards, and the problem was again meta wise, those are not fun decks to play against. The Kinemon, those decks are just unfortunate. But again, with the right pilot and with the right circumstances, maybe a little string of luck. Maybe I don't think luck's the right word, of course, but because you do draw a ton of cards. But this has a much more suitable matchup because blue was a better color in set one because you could build on it with set two. And
Mhm.
purple, you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So I think it does fall in good. I do see it doing well, just because it is not in large quantities like we'll see in Kinemon, I'm imagining, but I do think we'll see him and Dofi appear heavily in tournaments because I do think the West will cater to blue heavier.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think set two has a much more clear top tier versus bottom tier. Set two, anything could go, but in this like really fast meta, it really is just a like this is on the top, everything else is going to have a hard time fighting against it. And some people enjoy that. They want the uphill battle. Some people want to play Whitebeard and Zoro and just win. It just
Yeah, and I think that's the unfortunate thing about this set. I think there was a lot of good building blocks set up for. I like the cards in blue, I like the cards in black. But there was such a clear divide because red and green were so good in set one, and then they got the best cards again in set two. That creates this power divide. I do think it's not as there in set three. I know red did win heavily the first tournament, so I might not back that. But I do think the colors are a little bit diverse betterly in the next set. So if you're sad about seeing only red and green in the top, hang on for a couple months. We'll get set three, and that definitely helps balance it. But I do think this is the case going into set two. These decks are clear at the top. I think Zoro might be a little lower than the rest of the best, but Zoro's definitely going to be more consistent and better than Avank. It might be like a 1.5, but those three decks for sure are going to win a lot of tournaments.
absolutely. Yeah. And if you have any spicy counter meta picks, let us know in the comments. I want to know what you're doing to beat these top four, top five decks. Are you taking Zed with 1,000 2K counters?
Yes, I am.
Or are you finding a way to make Sanji work, which would make my heart grow 10 sizes?
Please.
And if you play Garp, let me know. I was looking at Garp list and I was like, I want this to be good. So we'll see. Let us know what you think in the comments.
Yes, fingers crossed. That is our prediction of the Western Set 2 meta. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're still here, please consider doing all the YouTube things. Like, comment, subscribe. And we will see you in the next one.
Peace.
Bye-bye. God, I'm sick of red.
Why do I want Garp to be so good?
That's weird, yeah. I hope for you, buddy. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Daddy figures.